garden tour Saturday on I think it's the 26th, it could be the 25th. My watch plays games with me. It switches days in the middle of the day and it really confuses me. So if you're new here, welcome. Hello, my name is Lisa and this is my Central Vancouver Island garden. Today we're doing a live backyard garden tour as part of a collaboration with Grandma Sandy, the host, Suffolk Susie down in New York, Barb Daly Rural Life in Washington State, and Patricia N. Cube in the southern United States. Normally I focus my live backyard gardens in recent days on the vegetable garden, but today we're going to check out my backyard orchard and possibly the vegetable garden, but we're going to start with the fruit trees and the berries, all those things today because I don't feel like filming an edited video. So I'm going to take you off the tripod and we're going to check out my apple tree, one of the apple trees. This is a 5 variety apple tree and it is in its, I want to say this is the 9th growing season or no, this is the 9th growing season for this tree. Last year between these two apple trees we had about 500 apples and there are a ton of apples on this tree. There are 5 varieties of apples on each tree and I very likely will be thinning them. There are apples here, there, and everywhere. We recently had, a couple days ago, a really big storm came through, and normally a lot of fruit will fall off the trees when we get a big windstorm, and not a single fruit came off any of my fruit trees. No cherries, no apples, no peaches. Nothing came down in the windstorm, which is kind of crazy and very weird. So I have a lot of thinning to do soon. And this is my second apple tree. This tree is short and stout. When it was just a little baby tree, somebody, whether it was a person or animal, nobody witnessed it, but this tree was mauled down to a tiny little stump. Can you see this? Where are we? Tiny little stump that was like this big in its first growing season, and I almost pulled it out, but my parents said don't pull it out, keep it in the ground, see what it does in the spring, and sure enough it sprouted leaves and the rest is history. I think it's in its 10th growing season now and it grows really well. I suspect it was supervisor that mauled it down, although there are no witnesses, so who knows. But it has a lot of apples on it. There are apples everywhere. This tree is on fire with apple production. It literally had thousands of flowers in the springtime. And I suspect that it had about 98% pollination. It's so crazy. Klein, welcome. Our pear tree here in Oregon had so many pears the branches broke. Oh dear. That happened to my plum tree. I'll show you the plum tree in a minute. Down here, I want to say that was like maybe 7 or 8 years ago. It had a huge bumper crop of plums, like literally thousands, and it was still a young tree. And then the branches started breaking, and I ended up cutting 50% of the tree off that season, and unfortunately, it's never been the same. It's never had a good crop, like nothing like that ever since. And it might actually be dying now in its 10th season. It's really not healthy, but that's awesome that your pear tree had a really good harvest. Did you have any, that was just last year that happened? I was just wondering if you had any more seasons since then to compare your production value. We're going to check out my blueberry bushes. I don't show them very often on this channel. Just sort of forget about them usually. They're about 10 years old, and this one is super confused, sort of like, well, it's not really like any of the other ones. This tree had an accident when it was about a year old, and this one I can blame on myself. I accidentally weed whacked it down to like the tiniest size. It had like 2 leaves and it was this big, its first season. And ever since then, it's been confused. So it is blooming now, and all of my other blueberry bushes are actually done blooming. And these dark colored leaves, these are actually leaves from the fall still. It loses its leaves at really weird times. These will fall off very shortly. It does have new growth on it, but the fall leaves are still here. And the unusual thing about when it was mulled down, it really switched the growing patterns. Now the berries come much later, and I'm not upset about that at all. It's kind of nice to have them at different times. Here's a non-confused blueberry bush. This is a pretty good size one, and this one produces the best out of my collection of blueberries. Lots of blueberries on here. It's going to be a good year. I had a couple years where the blueberry production wasn't as good, but this year it actually looks pretty good. So that is super exciting. Now we are going to venture down the gravel pathway and check out another blueberry. I did last fall, I think it was in the fall, I started experimenting with transplanting some of my strawberries over here, more into the landscape versus the vegetable garden, and they're doing pretty well. They're having a good time in this mulch. So moving up this way, we have another blueberry bush. This one is actually pretty loaded with berries too, a few flowers left. You can see some of the green berries have formed already. I think it's going to have a good year. I don't remember the variety names, but these berries are much smaller than the previous ones I showed you on the pretty lush, huge bush I showed a few minutes ago. And let's take a closer look at that plum tree that I believe is dying. So this is my technically now 6 variety plum tree. It started out as 5 varieties from Costco. A couple years ago we grafted a 6th variety on it, and it is not having a good time. It has thousands of flowers, but it is so unhealthy. Check out all the dead on this tree. Well, it's not totally dead, but it's not really looking healthy. Like, it's not totally brittle. I can't just break it off, but it's not looking good, and the leaves are so unhealthy. It looks like it has a combination of peach leaf curl mixed with some other dying phenomenon. And over here, we've got other stuff happening. All kinds of really unhealthy looking stuff, and I kind of wonder if there's any plums at all on this tree. Even though it had thousands of flowers, I think it is just dying a slow death. And I'll show you the trunk of the tree, which really makes me think it is dying. I don't know if it's a parasite or something got into the tree, but look at this. Down here, I can stick a part of my finger into the tree, and I don't think that's a good sign. Like, I literally think it's dying from this right here. Whatever happened here, it got into the tree, and it's not doing good things. Walks and lyrics. If I remember right, I think your name is Joy, and you are Canadian, and I think you're in Ontario or Vancouver. I'm not sure. But welcome to my backyard on Vancouver Island. We are talking about the health of this plum tree. It is not looking promising. Tar Baby Yoda, welcome. This might be the season where I actually cut this tree down. I'm not sure yet. Gonna give it a little bit more of a chance, but Sandra Atkinson, hi there from the island. Welcome, another Vancouver Islander. I have literally had it for 10 years, but it is so unhealthy. I'm not 100% convinced on my decision to cut it down yet, but I'm getting pretty close to being, okay, we're just gonna cut you down. I think it might have lived its best life and it's on its way out. I know trees And plants do have a lifespan, and sometimes they get sick, just like people, and not everyone lives forever. So this might be the end of this tree. Time will tell. Now let's, on a more positive note, look at something that's doing much better. We have these raspberries, and the cool thing about these raspberries, I didn't plant a single one of these. These are all from my neighbor's garden, right over the fence. And no, they didn't give me them. They planted themselves. They have a tremendous patch of the same variety on the other side of the fence. And early in my gardening days, I've been gardening for 10 years here, they started self-seeding in the grass, and I couldn't control them. I weed whacked them so many times. And eventually I just said, to heck with it. If I can't control them, I'm just going to let them grow. And I'm so happy I did. They produce such awesome raspberries. And they're actually a different variety than the ones I planted myself in the vegetable garden. You can see the bees are having a lovely time at pollinating these flowers. They're the most subtle looking flowers, but they're pretty happy here. That bee might actually be sleeping on that flower. It's hardly moving, but they're pretty happy on these raspberries, and they are delicious. So I'm so happy that I stopped fighting with Mother Nature and just let nature do its thing. If it wanted raspberries here and it gave me them, I shouldn't fight about it. Just embrace what nature gives you. Raspberries are good. Yes, they are. They are healthy, they're nutritious, they're delicious, and awesome plants to have in the garden. We're going to check out a strawberry now. This is my ultimate favorite strawberry plant right here, and it's just starting to get the baby strawberries. This strawberry plant is actually very different than your traditional strawberry. If you can tell, the leaves are more yellow, and that is because this plant is actually a very different variety. The package says it was called an alpine strawberry, and from a company here called West Coast Seeds. So these strawberries are actually a whitish yellow, almost very pale orange color, and very, very tiny at maturity. You can see them here. Now they will get much bigger, but if you compare them to a traditional strawberry, they're probably like, think of the smallest red strawberry you see, and then make it even more minuscule by about 50%. They are tiny little berries, but so delicious. They taste just like cotton candy. That is the best way I can describe them, with the essence of strawberry. So good, highly recommend them. Now, West Coast Seeds, not trying to diss any seed companies, but honestly not a great seed company, but their strawberries are awesome. The thing I don't like about them is they're very expensive with poor germination overall as a company. But this particular seed package of alpine strawberries was worth it, for sure. I don't typically buy West Coast Seeds anymore, but it was worth it for these strawberry plants. You can see the raspberries again. And now we're going to check out my cherry tree. This is also a 5 variety cherry tree, and it's been in the ground for 10 years. So we can take a little view from above. There are so many cherries on here this year, and overall it's kind of produced on and off. There's always cherries every season, but it doesn't really ever have a bumper crop. However, I think this might be the year it actually turns into a bumper crop. There are so many cherries on here, so that is so exciting. But the bigger question is, if there is a bumper crop of cherries, who is going to eat them? Will it be humans or will it be birds? Because birds definitely love cherries. And even in years that haven't been bumper crops but good years, often the birds eat them. Sometimes I put little trays and those aluminum things that make noise to try to distract the birds, but they only work a little bit. Sometimes the birds get used to them. I've tried owl statues, owl figurines. The birds are pretty smart, and usually they ignore these little distractions. So what variety? I have been Lipan. I can't remember them all. There's 5 of them. I have the tag in the house, but they're really good cherries. There's both sweet and sour cherries. There's some that are dark red, light red, pale orangey red, and I don't remember all the names, but they are delicious, and I'll show them. Stella, I believe I have that one too. They're all on this tree. Robins love cherries, absolutely. They will come in droves. They seem to tell each other the secrets of where the food is. So hopefully, if it is a bumper crop of cherries, that I would hope that humans can have some and not just the birds, but time will tell. And I don't mind feeding Mother Nature, but it is nice to get some yourself too. Now we are going to venture into the world of figs. I have several fig trees on this property, and we're going to start with the ones that are most productive. Down by this section of the garden. When I first started gardening here in the summertime, this whole section where you see grass under the plants, basically it was so infertile, it was so dry, it was like a desert. Like in the summertime, the soil actually cracked and there was no grass or anything here. It was so dry, and that is the reason I planted Desert King fig trees, because I felt like this section of the garden was literally like a desert. Hello, Barb! Welcome to my backyard tour. Today's focus is on the orchard. We're checking out berries and fruit trees and that kind of thing, and we might hit the vegetable garden at the end. I'm not sure. So this is one of my 2 Desert King fig trees. And I have to say, this tree is not 10 years old. It was planted, well, I'm going to say it's 6, maybe 7 years old now. I can't remember exactly. It wasn't planted when the other trees were planted. It was much later. Desert King is best variety for Vancouver Island. I would agree with that. I have several varieties, and by far it produces the best and grows the best. And this is the first season. I don't want to count my chickens before they've hatched. And no, I don't have backyard chickens. It's just a little expression I say all the time. I think I'm going to have my very first bumper fig crop. This is so exciting. Let's check out the volume of figs here. There are quite a few figs on this tree. Everywhere you look, there are more figs, and I am so delighted. I didn't really want to announce that on this channel because I have family members that watch, and that is awesome. But I also have family members that are absolutely crazy for figs, and I share all of my garden produce. I didn't want to get them too excited before I actually showed what was going on with my trees. Brown turkey. No, this is Desert King. I have some mystery fig trees that haven't produced yet. We're going to get to those in a little bit, and they could be a brown turkey, but we haven't got there yet. So this is Desert King, and it is really growing well this season. Not last year, but the year before in the fall, I actually massacred it down. It was much taller, this one and my other Desert King. And then the previous, last year wasn't the best season. We got a decent amount of figs, but not a bumper crop by any means. And this year, I think the trees have rebounded and they are just going crazy with production. You can see the bigger ones here, and what's happening now is a second flush of figs is forming. I don't know if they're gonna be sustainable because the color is different. I hope they're not gonna fall off, but so far, so good, fingers crossed. And they're getting them in many parts of the tree, the second little crop of figs. Now, usually the second crop of figs comes after, like way after the first one. I think they call this, I always mix up the terms, the breba, I can't even say it, the brega crop? No, that's not right, I don't know. It starts with a B. I think that's the first crop, I want to say, and then the second one is later. I might have mixed those up. Yes, that is the term, Darth. I cannot pronounce the word. And usually we don't get the fall figs to ripe on Vancouver Island. Last season was the first time ever. I had Desert King and Chicago Hardy, yes, that we haven't seen yet. First time ever they ripened in the fall. So that was super exciting. I got 2 crops on Desert King and 1 crop on Chicago Hardy. But this is interesting because it's almost like the tree is producing 2 crops at the same time in the spring. And that has never happened that I'm aware of. Because it's like the bigger ones came first and now all the smaller ones are coming. I'm almost wondering if I'm going to get 3 crops of figs this season. The ones that are big right now, followed by those smaller ones, those will all get picked. And then I think there's going to be a 3rd crop that comes sort of midsummer after those ones are gone. That's my theory. With the way the tree is looking, I don't know if that's going to happen, but fingers crossed, that would be amazing if it did. This is one of my roses with no flowers yet, a cedar tree. And here's a little tip for you. If you live in the Pacific Northwest or any area where you have a lot of rain, but you don't have rain barrels and you don't have a rain collection system, if you have things like wheelbarrows, 5-gallon pails, just leave them out when it rains. You can fill buckets and then water your plants with the rainwater. Free water right there from the sky. So let's check out Desert King fig number 2. We have more things to check out here. This is the 2nd Desert King fig tree. Now this one is in a little bit of a different growing location, although it's along the fence. It is between 2 western red cedars as well as a large maple of sorts. I think it's called a Norwegian maple, the boulevard tree. So it gets a lot more shade. Mine are container, nothing. I plant in the ground to get more. Absolutely, if you plant your fig in the ground, if you have space, plant it in the ground. You will probably get 4 times the number of figs at least. Maybe not the first season, but eventually you will. So that is definitely something you want to consider. But if you know the variety, do your research, because if you're not growing a dwarf fig, fig roots can go crazy. Do not plant them close to houses or structures where there's cement, concrete, wood, anything where there's a structure. Don't plant the tree too close. They can cause a lot of damage with the roots. Plant them a good distance away from your structures. And yes, I did plant this close to the fence, but I'm actually not worried about the fence. The fence will need replacing in a few years anyways, so we're not going to talk about that right now. But anyways, this is Desert King fig number 2, and it is also having a pretty good year, and it is doing the same thing that the first one is doing. With the figs, you can see the bigger ones, and then just like the other tree, it's getting the 2nd crop of smaller ones, which is very interesting. Hasn't really done that before, so I'm super interested to see if it's going to also get a 3rd crop like I'm predicting. And this one doesn't have as many, but it still has quite a few on this tree. What I find interesting is that the bottom of the tree is so naked. There are no leaves and hardly any figs on the bottom. It feels like this tree is practicing Mother Nature's nudism in tree form. It's kind of weird. Like, it's kind of cool, but it's kind of weird. Like, where are all the leaves? Why do we have naked branches here? I'm not sure what the story is. Like, should there not be more leaves here? Is this tree confused? I don't know why it doesn't want to produce figs or leaves on its lower section, but it seems to enjoy being a natural nudist in the backyard garden. So I guess we're just going to appreciate its smooth branches. Next, we're going to check out my coconut ice peach tree. This tree's been on the struggle bus this season. It is planted under an overhang, and it has its worst case of peach leaf curl it has ever had. I've been treating it, and it is looking a lot better, but it's still not super healthy. It's not dying by any means. Don't worry, it is definitely here to stay. But there are still some infected leaves. There are definitely peaches on the tree. And I don't know why it's having so much peach leaf curl. So what I do to treat this tree for peach leaf curl is actually, I treat it organically. When I had a dog who passed away about 4 months ago, he was here for 10 years, I didn't want to use any type of harsh chemicals, pesticides, sprays in the backyard because he was a golden, and golden retrievers are mouthy dogs. They get into everything. They put everything in their mouth, and I didn't want to hurt him. So no sprays in this backyard. I feed this tree lots of organic fertilizers, bone meal, rock phosphate, sea soil, different composts, manures, seaweed extract. It gets all these different amendments, and that's how I feed the tree and get rid of disease. If you think when you are sick as a human, you probably take medicine, you probably try to eat a lot more healthy foods. I treat my trees as if they were humans, in a sense, because I feed them super nutritious food when they're sick, and I slowly remove the sick leaves. Now, maybe you wouldn't do that as a human, but in trees, I gradually remove the infected leaves. You can see some nude branches, and I do it gradually so the tree can produce more leaves and not get too shocked by the leaf removals. And it does work. I have done this in several seasons, but it is a very slow process. And this year it was hit harder than usual. Oh no, no Zipper. Zipper is gone. I don't know if you were around when he was around too long, but yeah, he passed away. He was an old man. He had a good life. Shay Mella, hi, I got here from your comment. You get those emails. And oh gosh. I remember that comment. I want to say that was on, what's his name? His Chen. Oh, I can't remember his name. I love his videos, and I feel like he doesn't have enough confidence on YouTube. Kind of off the topic, but I do watch like YouTube videos on how to grow on YouTube and that kind of thing sometimes. Some are making me a little tired, but I do love his videos. Tucker and I from Newfoundland. Welcome to Vancouver Island. I've been enjoying your comments. Yeah, so I think he just needs a little more confidence with his videos. Chen, I wish I could remember his first name. If you remember the channel name, put it in the chat. But I do watch all of his videos, and I think he's going to be a big YouTuber, but does need more confidence, I feel like. I subscribed. I love this. Well, thank you. I appreciate every subscriber. I've been trying hard to grow my channel, and everyone helps, so that is super awesome. We are checking out my coconut ice peach tree right here, and yes, it has peaches. If you're new to coconut ice peaches, or peaches in general, but coconut ice is a unique variety, and I've talked about it a lot on this channel. I had not tried the flavor before purchasing this tree. This tree I planted in 2020. 2020? Yeah. I think that was the year the pandemic started, and I never had a peach tree before. It was the only one available at my local garden shop, so I got it right away when I saw it, and I planted it. I didn't know what the peaches would taste like, so the tag says it's a white peach. Didn't produce the first year. Second year, I believe it did. Second or third year it did. And it produced the most delicious peaches. And if I could describe them, where do you get coconut peach? Nobody sells it. Well, where I got it was actually the local Bucker Fields in Nanaimo. I don't know. I haven't seen it since. I don't know if it's not coming back or what, but basically the peaches taste like a tropical drink. Like, I've never tasted a peach like this. I would describe it as like a very tropical flavored drink with the essence of peach. It is so delicious. I've never tasted a similar peach before in my life. So last season I went around the garden putting lots of the pits everywhere, hoping to get more peach trees. I don't think any of them sprouted, unfortunately, but nobody sells it. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that one year Buckerfields had it, and I don't know why they didn't get it back. Before I bought this peach, I really wanted the Nanaimo peach, which if you Google peach trees on Vancouver Island, or if you Google good peach trees for Vancouver Island, Nanaimo peach comes up, and I live in Nanaimo, and you cannot buy it here. I believe it was patented. This is going to be crazy, but from my research, it was patented by who I believe to be an American, and I think they live in Washington, and I think they live on a small island, kind of like Vancouver Island. I don't remember the name, but I believe it was actually patented by an American. And the Nanaimo peach was awesome because it was one that pretty much was disease resistant to all the leaf curls and all the fungus that we get in the rainy weather. You didn't need an overhang. There was a whole blog or something I read about this peach tree, and I don't know if that was the original owner who posted it, but anyways, you're trying to get fedora trees in Nanaimo. What is a fedora tree? Is that a different type of fruit, or is that a type of peach? Anyways, the Nanaimo peach is elusive, and I've read all kinds of different websites. So many people on Vancouver Island have been looking for the Nanaimo peach over the last few years. Nobody can find it because none of the nurseries will ship it to Canada from the US. This is mind-blowing. Like, who would do that? I don't know if they were Canadian to begin with and they moved to the US. Was this an American who came to Canada and just happened to be gardening here and then found the perfect variety of peach and took it back to the US and refuses to give it back to its city where it originated? It is mind-blowing. Like, really, if you're going to call it the Nanaimo peach, and if you started it in Nanaimo, please give it back to Nanaimo. I mean, we need something named after us other than the Nanaimo bar that is good for us, like a healthy treat instead of just Nanaimo bars. So that elusive Nanaimo peach trees, if I ever move to the US, I am definitely going to get a Nanaimo peach tree. I shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to do that in Nanaimo, but I cannot. Yeah, I'm curious if you can buy them in the Washington nurseries. I'm assuming you can, but I don't really know. So that is the story of my coconut ice peach tree. Now, let's check out some more fruit trees in the garden. We have some mystery fig trees. Right here, this is what I like to call a rescue fig tree. This was originally not in my garden, but actually in my parents' garden. Citrus, it's from New Zealand. It's supposed to grow on Vancouver Island. Oh, that is super interesting. I think there's a couple YouTube channels that talk about growing citrus on Vancouver Island. I know Food Forest Permaculture, Howie will talk about that on his channel. He grows lemons in Victoria. But I think there's a couple other ones, and I don't really follow them, so I'm not sure. But I personally tried to grow lemons as well. We're not going to talk about how that ended, but it didn't grow well. But from my understanding, Victoria is actually a bit of a warmer growing zone than Nanaimo. We're zone 7 to 8, and Victoria is typically, I want to say 8 to 9 on average for their growing zone, so they're a little warmer. I'm not sure where you are, but trying to get, you're somewhere in Nanaimo. And even in Nanaimo, I would say there's different growing, I don't know if I say different growing zones, but different microclimates. I live in the south end of Nanaimo. I won't say which neighborhood, but my area is actually, I would say, 3 to 5 degrees warmer than the rest of the city on average. I have thermometers in my house, backyard, front yard. I've lived here my whole life for 30-something years and in different areas of the city. And from my personal gardening experience, different areas of Nanaimo absolutely have different climates. North and central Nanaimo are going to be colder than the south end. We're supposed to be 9A, 8B. Oh, interesting. Maybe they recently upgraded the zones because I've understood that we were 7 to 8, but we may have near Lanceville. Okay, interesting. Okay. Yeah, so there's so many microclimates even within our own city that you can have very different growing conditions within the same area, essentially. Mystery fig tree from my parents' garden. They just more, and I was happy to take it. Has yet to ever produce figs. I don't know how old it is. I'm going to estimate it's about 4 to 5, maybe 6 years old. It's pretty small and slow growing, but it hasn't produced. I'm really hoping this is the season at some point it's going to produce, but it's really slow to even get leaves, let alone figs. So who knows? And I don't know what variety it is. It is growing right beside a burning bush and a rose. This is one of my favorite roses, the knockout rose. It's so beautiful, the best rose for beginners. Very hardy and disease resistant and drought tolerant, this rose. And now we're going to venture up and check out a few more fig trees. It's probably a turkey fig. It could be. We have another rescue coming up on the right-hand side here. This is another rescue, also from my parents' garden. It is tiny, and I do not know the variety. It has never produced, and once again, I'm hoping it might. I hope it's a dwarf fig tree, but I really don't know actually on this one. I do actually have a dwarf fig tree that I'm probably not going to show in this tour because it's actually in my 4th channel 93, name a dance for a short. Well, honestly, you're not going to like this, but the first thing that came to my mind is the polka dance. I know that's not a popular dance, but that was literally the first word that popped into my mind when I read your comments. So polka dance is my word. So yeah, this tree hasn't produced, and fingers crossed it will. I have a dwarf in my front yard, dwarf fig, and I don't really like to film in the front garden live because it is, you know, it's a privacy thing. If I'm editing the video, I can edit out little landmarks and things that people might know my location, but live is a little bit different. So I don't usually do a live in the front garden, but I have Violet de Bardot, I think it's called, in the front yard. It's actually a dwarf fig tree. Is that the right one? I think that's the right one I'm talking about. And last year, I actually did get a fig for the first time. I didn't film it on the channel, or I think I had 2 figs actually. And they were good. They actually weren't as good flavor-wise as I expected compared to my Desert King or my Chicago Hardy, which we haven't seen yet. So it's nice, and it's the tiniest little fig tree. Like, if you think this tree here is small, my Violet de Bardot is about this big, and this big, and it produced 2 figs, which I think is absolutely nutty. Violet de Bordeaux, oh, super exciting. You might get figs. I didn't get them the first year. I think it was 2nd or 3rd year I got figs, but it depends how old the tree is, I think, if you're going to get them. So let's check out one more tree here. This is my nectarine tree, and yes, this is a dwarf tree. And this is it the 2nd or 3rd season? I think I lose track of the time so easily. I want to say it's the 2nd season, but it could be the 3rd season. It has not produced. It is super tiny, but it's doing okay, and there is no overhang here for it. It does have a tiny bit of this disease, the peach leaf curl, which I keep treating and picking off, but overall it's really healthy. Considering there's absolutely no overhang for it, I would say it's doing pretty well in this little corner. It didn't flower this season, and I didn't really expect it to. I think it's still too young to produce fruits, but that's okay. It can just grow up in its little corner here. Do I have nectarine shrub? Well, this is essentially my nectarine shrub. It is a nectarine tree, and the tag said at maturity, it will get no bigger than 6 feet. I don't think it's even going to get 6 feet tall. Like, it is so tiny right now. This is my leg. It is, I'm going to say it's like maybe 2 feet, not even 2 feet tall at this point. It's a really small tree. So I don't expect it's going to get very big. I mean, 6 feet max is, I'm not 6 feet tall, but it's not that tall. So yeah, I don't think it's going to get very big. But next, we are going to check out, I'm going to take a drink first, and then we are going to check out my honeyberries and my Chicago Hardy fig tree that we talked about earlier. I just got 2 of the romance cherry trees. Romance cherry trees. Interesting. I've never heard of those. Where did you find them? That sounds super interesting. It sounds like they might be a dwarf tree. Or is it just small right now? Dwarf trees are my favorite. Like, really? When I bought the peach tree, I was actually looking for a dwarf. I think that one's considered semi-dwarf, the coconut ice, but I couldn't find a dwarf at the time. Canadian Tire. Oh, very interesting. have to check that out. So right beside me, this is a honeyberry, also known as a hascat berry. I have 3 of these in my vegetable garden. There's one here, and another one back there. Now these produce berries pretty early, and you do need a female and a male. I have both here, and I do have some honeyberries. Last season was the first time I ever got the honeyberries, and I have already harvested and eaten quite a few, but there are still some out here. See if I can show you. Can we see the blue at the back? We'll do a little picking and harvesting here. So this is what a honeyberry or a hascat berry looks like. I don't know if you guys can see very well. I would describe it as a, where did we go? Elongated blueberry is the best description I can think of. If you're in South Nanaimo, does Rona in South have a decent garden center? I would say yes, but it fluctuates. Like, I've been going to Rona for many years. It's not too far from where I live. And sometimes the garden center is super awesome. You can find all kinds of stuff there, but it's hit and miss. It's like most garden centers. The selection varies too. It depends what you're looking for specifically. Like, yeah, it's limited, but I think it's good. And so I have gotten some really good deals there too. So really depends what you're looking for. So anyways, we're going to do a little taste test. I think of these berries as the blueberry alternative, but more tart. Yeah, definitely on the tart side, but good. Juicy. I eat them the way that they are. Now, if you're someone who loves a sweet fruit, you may not like honeyberries or hascat berries if you eat them raw. Your honeyberries got taken out by aphids. Oh, that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, so they are definitely on the tart side of the spectrum. Blueberries can be tart too, but blueberries are definitely sweeter than these berries. But what I like about them, if your plant doesn't get taken up by aphids or other garden menaces, is that they do mature early, so much earlier than a blueberry. Good evening, Howie. Welcome. I was just showing the chat my hascap or honey berries, and I just did a little harvest. You can do another one. There's some here on this bush. I might as well pick those before the birds eat them. I don't know if the birds are eating them or not, but got a couple here. Yeah, definitely on the tartar side. I will say though, this harvest I'm doing today is better than the last one I did. I did one a little bit earlier. The berries were blue, but they could have been a little bit riper. I ate them anyway, of course, but they were, like, even the ones I just ate were sweeter than the first one I picked, but still on the tart side, but I think that's the nature of a hascat berry. Fantastic, yes. We did most of a orchard tour already, but we're not quite done. We have another fig tree to check out, and then I might just give you a little sneak peek into the vegetable garden today. So we have to go through the vegetable garden anyways to get to the fig tree. So let's just do a sneak peek here. We've got kale everywhere, and I will just say, if you're new to my channel, my garden is not a neat and tidy garden. If I was to describe it, it is wild. It doesn't matter how hard I try to be neat and tidy and professional and grow in straight lines. My garden is a jungle every season. A different plant dominates the garden every season. Sometimes it's sunflowers, sometimes it's something else, but it grows into a jungle every year. I am not a tidy gardener, and my garden grows wild. But there is life here, there, and everywhere. There are kale plants that are in bloom. I'm still eating a lot of the leaves, and I do eat kale flowers. If you've never tried a kale flower, super delicious. I'll give you a little taste test. I eat these all the time actually on my salads. This is not new for me, but if you've never eaten them, here, this is for you. They have kind of a mildly spicy, tangy flavor, but not over the top. They're awesome in salads. I want to get more Chicago hard figs, but they're so rare here. I didn't know they were rare. I'll show you mine, and I can't remember. I feel like it was Canadian Tire where I got it a few years ago. But we have tomatoes growing all over. These were started in my house in late winter, early spring, and they are thriving out here. And I've noticed a correlation that tomatoes seem to like cabbage plants. The tomatoes that are growing close to the cabbages are doing so well. That was one example, and I have an even better example of tomatoes and cabbages that seem to love each other. Coming up right here, check out this enormous cabbage plant and check out the tomato. They are just loving life together in this garden. This is the first time I've ever tried to grow cabbage in my garden, and the correlation I noticed is that tomatoes and cabbages apparently are very good garden buddies. I never would have suspected that, actually. I did look up companion planting, and I don't even remember reading that they were supposed to be compatible, but I think that just goes to show sometimes plants surprise you with compatibility. And so this is my Chicago Hardy fig tree. And last fall was the first time I ever got to try their figs. Weirdly enough, there was only one fig in the spring, like the early crop of figs. And I was waiting and waiting for it to ripen, and I was just about to pick it. I was like, oh, it's getting close. I should give it one more day, and the next day it was gone. I don't think Supervisor ate it. He was still alive, but somebody ate it, and it wasn't me, so I don't know who got it. I think it could have been a squirrel, perhaps, but I only have a bolting purple cabbage. I'm trying to save seeds. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never had the cabbage bolt. My bok choy bolts all the time. I never get to harvest it, but I don't know about cabbage. Anyways, this Chicago Hardy here. So I didn't get the first one, and then I thought I won't get any. But by fall, I didn't even know the figs were on the tree. There were 6 figs on my Chicago Hardy, and they were various shades of dark purple. And they were so different looking. I actually made a video testing Chicago Hardy figs, and I picked a few figs from the tree, and I wanted to show in the video how different they were, to the point where I actually wondered if there was a second variety grafted on the tree because they looked so different and they tasted quite different. I think in conclusion, it was that they were completely different levels of ripeness. One was like pretty much almost overripe versus like one that was ripe but could have been more ripe, but they looked like different figs. It was crazy. It was probably Supervisor. Like, literally, he was naughty. And I think if he got reincarnated, I mean, everyone believes in different things, if you believe in reincarnation or not. I don't think he was reincarnated into a dog. He would have been reincarnated into a different creature because he was so naughty in his life. Like, I didn't talk about a lot of his naughtiness on this channel. He was beyond naughty that I don't even want to talk about on the internet. But he was a naughty dog. He was very lovely, and he was full of love, but he did a lot of naughty things in his life. And I think depending on what cycle, whether he's a spirit up there, whether he's been reincarnated, I'm not sure, but if he was reincarnated, he went down on the scale. He didn't get to dog. He went to like spider or amoeba or something else because he was just so naughty. So here we have Chicago Hardy, and it does have figs, but not that many this spring. I think I saw 2 on here, if I remember right. If nothing has happened to them. Now, there's no Supervisor. That doesn't mean other things. Oh, there's one. Couldn't have happened to the figs. Now, there was another one. The last time I checked. Oh, there it is. There's number 2. And as far as I know, that's all the figs on here. But I do wonder if, just like last fall, if it's going to be 1 or 2 figs in spring and then a more abundant crop in the fall. That's my theory. That's what happened last year. So time will tell. Since we're in the vegetable garden, check out the potatoes. They are so crazy. Now, I don't understand this. These potatoes, can I back up? Let's see, are so tall. Like if I was to give you a little, let me zoom out, comparison. Like they are so tall. Let's see if I can straighten my leg. They're about, I'm going to say they're 3.5 feet tall, these potatoes. Now, I'm not sure if I should start harvesting. And the weird thing is, these potatoes over here were planted about 2 months before these potatoes. And these ones are clearly so much bigger. And I don't know why. Like, this is absolutely insane, these potatoes. And I actually interplanted them with onions. Now, don't know if that has anything to do with the size of the potatoes. But check this out. I have more than 160 onions planted in this garden. I did a plant with me video here. And we're going to dive into the world of foliage here and check out my interplanted potato onion mixture. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Should I start harvesting these potatoes? Is it worth it? I lost figs and cherries this week due to bad weather. No, I thought when we got that windstorm, was it last night? Was it 2 to 3 nights ago? I can't remember. At least in my area, we had a huge windstorm that came through, I'm going to say between 7 and 9 p.m. And then there was a little bit of rain, not much rain. It was mostly like crazy gusts of winds. I thought the power would go out. It actually didn't. But I thought what would happen is a lot of fruit would drop, because usually in June on Vancouver Island, in my garden anyways, with the windstorms, I lose a lot of fruit. I went outside the next day and not a single fruit on any of the trees. Like my apples that have thousands of fruits, my peaches, my cherries, nothing had fallen. And I was beyond shocked. I was like, I don't even understand how the wind can be so vicious. We had like somebody, one of the neighbors, have like one of those carports where it's kind of like a tent, but it's like a carport. I don't know how to describe it. And it was blowing around on the road. I've actually never seen it do that before. Like it completely uplifted and was like, it was like a tornado come through, and it was like just blowing around. And I thought, okay, for sure, lots of fruit would be on the ground, and nothing was off the trees. June is usually hot. Well, that varies. We've had really cold Junes. Sometimes they call it January on Vancouver Island, and sometimes it's hot. We had a heat wave. You might be thinking of the year we had the heat wave 4 to 5 years ago when it was like 40 to something degrees here. So that might be what you're thinking of. Our Junes are very, very variable in temperature, I would say. So what do you guys think? Should I start harvesting these potatoes? Because check this out. This poor little tomato plant is completely being overtaken. This one, and there's another one. You can hardly even see the poor little tomato. If we come over here, you see all this. We have a sunflower, and this is a massive potato, and right beside it is a little baby tomato. Well, it's not super baby, but it's completely getting overrun by the potatoes. But do you think if I harvest the potatoes now, is it worth it? Like, are they big enough to actually say, oh yeah, it was worth pulling up the plants and digging them up? Put soil on top of this buzz and leave for another month. Well, that's what I was thinking, but I'm just worried about these poor little tomatoes, that they're growing so close. Are they going to get too much shade? I could cut some of the leaves back, I guess. I mean, this guy is being overrun. We have potatoes. There are chives and raspberries kind of surrounding it. I mean, I did plant it here, but I didn't know the potatoes. They literally look like they're on steroids. And I promise you, I did not put anything inorganic in this garden. There is nothing inorganic. So I don't know what got into these guys. Like, they are absolutely gone bananas in here. So that is the story of the potatoes. My peas are just starting to grow a little bit better, and the garlic is on fire with growth. That was planted in the fall. And check this out. This is super pretty, and I love it. This is a variegated nasturtium. I love the foliage. No flowers yet, but it's still early. My tomato actually is blooming already. Gotta go. Bye. Bye. Thanks for joining in. And we have some marigolds that are blooming. These were started in my house. And I have a little patch of corn here, mixed in with the onions, and all the sunflowers are volunteers from last season. And I have planted a whole bunch of squash. Now they're on the struggle bus. There's some here, and this one here, this is some kind of volunteer. I don't know if this is a squash, a cucumber, a melon. What do you guys think this is? Something volunteered. You made a bean salad and a fresh spring salmon. Oh, that sounds delicious. You're going to have a lovely dinner tonight. And some pumpkin. More onions. The raspberries are going crazy, and so is the mint. The mint is on fire with growth. And I have to show you guys something that I did that I wasn't planning to do. I think I mentioned it in your live stream, Howie, that I went out and I bought a couple tomato plants, and I wasn't going to because I actually still have lots of plants in my milk jugs. They're a little small for the ground still, but I was plant shopping. I made a few little tutorial videos on planting different plants in my ornamental garden, and I always look around when I go plant shopping. I can't just go for what I came for. I check out all the plants, because why wouldn't you if you're at the garden center? And look what I found. This is so exciting. So this here, this is a story I am happy to tell. This is a tomato called Candyland. And there's actually two of them here. But what's exciting about this, there are two exciting things. First of all, when I bought that tomato, I thought it was one plant that I was buying. It was in a little, I don't know, 6-inch or whatever the smallest size tomato pot is. And I thought, okay, it's a really bushy plant when I went to plant it. And then I realized that there were two of them. And I was so excited. I think they were $2.99. So in a sense, $2.99 or $3.99? Maybe $3.99. So they're about $2 each. Not a bad price for tomato plants. And then, if you think about it, Candyland, sounds like you've tried it. I might have tried it. I want to say about 10 years ago, I was invited into one of my neighbor's gardens, who doesn't live here anymore. And they gave me one of the sweetest cherry tomatoes I've ever eaten. And normally I'm not a big fan of eating tomatoes raw. I like them cooked, and I like them in various dishes. And I like them raw if they're in like a salad, or like a, say you're having like a panini, or like some kind of a more exotic looking sandwich. I like them in that kind of thing, but not necessarily just I'm going to eat a tomato off the bush. That's not my favorite thing. But I tried this cherry tomato that they gave me, and it was so sweet. I've never tasted one like that, and I think it was Candyland. They did tell me the variety. I couldn't really remember, but I think that might have been what it was. So I'm so excited to have this tomato that is probably epically sweet. And I can't wait to see what kind of tomatoes it produces. And I got two of them, two for the price of one, which is so exciting. And then of course I bought, well, I shouldn't say of course, but I did buy another tomato plant too. This was one that none of these are the ones that I grew in milk jugs. I was focusing more on larger scale tomatoes in my milk jugs, such as beefsteak, some Russian tomatoes. And I didn't really get into the small tomatoes, so I just picked up a few small varieties in the store. This one is just called a patio. Now, the reason I picked it is because I've never actually grown a traditional patio plant for tomatoes. So I thought it would be interesting to try a more traditional container variety in a container, since that's what you're kind of supposed to do. So I'm really curious to see how that plant grows. So that is the story of my tomatoes. Now I have planted all kinds of other things, but I think I'll just show you my lettuces right here. And I think I'm actually going to go have my dinner now. So thank you all for joining me on this little Saturday evening garden tour. I hope you get into your gardens or get into nature, get some fresh air wherever you are, and we will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye. See you.